wide enjoyment, disposition, exclusion, and control. Remember that someone can sell all of what they own or part of what they own, but never more than what they own. Keep those concepts in mind as we continue the discussion on ownership. We'll also consider the transfer of title to real property as we discuss the concept of alienation and describe how title can be conveyed as we look at different types of deeds. Finally, we'll review the importance of the public records and title insurance. First, let's contrast sole ownership and the different forms of co-ownership. Ownership in severalty, also known as a tenancy in severalty, is the simplest form of ownership. It is a sole form of ownership, meaning that only one person or legal entity, such as a corporation, holds the title to that property. Don't be confused about the word severalty. It might sound as though it implies several people, but it really means that one owner's interest has been severed from the interests of all others. Co-ownership, also known as concurrent ownership, is any form of ownership where two or more persons or legal entities share title to real property, with each person having an undivided interest in the property. Undivided interest gives each co-owner the right to possess the whole property, not just part of it. Under the law, any number of persons may join in the ownership of real property. Co-ownership forms include tenancy in common and joint tenancy. Tenancy in common is the undivided interest in land with no right of survivorship. It is the only co-ownership that can be owned in unequal fractional portions. Tenancy in common is the most common type of co-ownership and can be created and conveyed by a deed or devise, which occurs under the provisions found in a will. In most states, if the language in a deed does not specify a specific type of co-ownership, or if the co-owners are not married to each other, tenancy in common is assumed. Joint tenancy may be created between two or more natural persons when each co-owner has an equal undivided interest in the property and the automatic right of survivorship. When one joint tenant dies, the surviving member or members of the joint tenancy receive the deceased person's share automatically and equally. Joint ownership requires the presence of four unities: time, all must acquire at the same time; title, all must acquire through the same document; interest, all must hold equal interests; and possession, all have equal rights of possession. Remember that a corporation, which is considered a legal person, can co-own property as a tenant in common, but never as a joint tenant. Parties to a joint tenancy or tenancy in common have the right of partition, which allows any co-owner to end the co-owner's share. A voluntary partition can be implemented where both parties agree to end the joint venture and divide the property so each owns a piece in severalty, if it can be done equitably. Or, one owner can sue the other through a judicial process to dissolve the co-ownership and divide the property or sell it and divide the proceeds according to the judgment of the courts. One last form of co-ownership we'll discuss is tenancy by the entireties. Tenancy by the entireties involves only owners who are legal spouses, and it generally includes the right of survivorship. This form of co-ownership is not recognized in every state. Before we move on, a quick caution. Although you may be familiar with these different forms of ownership, your role is not to be a lawyer, estate planner, or tax advisor. You should advise your clients to consult with an appropriate professional about their ownership options. Business organizations, nonprofit groups, and other entities may own property in severalty or as co-owners with other individuals or entities. There are a number of ways in which a business entity can be created and organized, and we'll quickly define some of them next. A sole proprietorship is a business owned by a single individual in severalty, where the owner is personally responsible for any business debts. A partnership is an association of two or more individuals as co-owners of a business. In a general partnership, all partners share in the financial liability both individually and as a member of the partnership. A limited partnership includes one or more general partners and one or more limited partners. The rights and duties of general partners in a limited partnership are the same as in a general partnership, but limited partners have no say in partnership matters. The liability of any limited partner is limited to their original investment. A corporation is a legal entity that is owned and controlled by its shareholders. Within a corporation, property is typically owned in severalty as the legal person, but the corporation could be a co-owner of property as a tenant in common. Shareholders are not personally liable for a corporation's debts. A limited liability company shares some characteristics of both a corporation and a partnership. Owners of an LLC, also referred to as members, have limited personal liability for the actions and debts of the company and benefit from pass-through income taxation. A security is an investment that gives an investor a financial interest in a business without allowing any sort of managerial control, such as shares in a corporation. Remember that securities are regulated by the federal government. Some states may regulate securities through blue sky laws. Unless you have a securities dealer license, you will not be able to arrange a real property transaction that also includes the transfer of shares in a corporation. A real estate investment trust, or REIT, is a real estate investment business with at least 100 investors. It's organized as a trust where one or more trustees manage property for the beneficiaries, the investors. In order to avoid income tax, a REIT must earn 75% of its income from real estate and distribute 95% of its taxable income to its beneficiaries. Finally, remember that when working with any business entity, real estate licensees must determine who has the legal authority to sign on the entity's behalf. Today, there are a number of alternative forms of home ownership beyond the traditional standalone single-family home. A common interest ownership community is one where all of the owners share in the costs associated with maintenance. The most common examples are condominiums and cooperatives that combine individual ownership with co-ownership in both the physical and legal realms. Condominiums are structured physically and legally to combine individual ownership with co-ownership. Each co-owner has a separate fee simple interest in the interior space of their individual unit combined with an undivided interest in the common areas, such as hallways and recreational facilities that all tenants own and use as tenants in common. Most condominiums also have limited common areas that are owned by all but used by only one owner, such as a balcony or parking space. Property taxes are levied against each individual unit owner. As part of the process to create a new condominium, a developer must record a condominium declaration. A cooperative or co-op is a building owned by a corporation where the residents are shareholders in the corporation. Each shareholder receives a proprietary lease on an individual unit and the right to use the common areas. Property taxes on a co-op are levied against the corporation, not individual unit owners. Townhomes are properties developed for co-ownership where each co-owner has a separate fee simple interest in an individual unit, including its exterior and the ground directly beneath the unit, as well as an undivided interest in the common areas of the property. This differs from condominium ownership where the fee simple interest is in the airspace only. A timeshare is a form of property co-ownership in which several buyers purchase interests in real estate with each party having the right to use the property and facilities for a designated period of time. Remember that someone who owns real property is said to have title to that property. Let's now turn our focus to the process of transferring title, which is called alienation. Title to real property may be transferred during an owner's lifetime by voluntary alienation or involuntary alienation. Voluntary alienation is the most common way to transfer ownership of real property. Voluntary alienation is an action that the property owner takes of their own free will. The most common example of voluntary alienation is an owner who agrees to sell the property, handing over title in exchange for consideration. This is usually completed with a deed. Other types of voluntary alienation include the gift of a deed, the dedication of private property for public use, or the grant of title to property from the government to an individual. Involuntary alienation, on the other hand, is the transfer of title and an interest in real property against the will of the owner or without action by the owner. Some examples of involuntary alienation include enforcing liens through foreclosure, adverse possession, condemnation through the power of eminent domain, and even natural forces. Natural forces include avulsion, which is a sudden process where land is violently torn away by flowing water, as in a flash flood, or accretion, which is a gradual addition to dry land, such as when a river deposits waterborne sediment. Acquiring title to land by adverse possession requires open and notorious, hostile and adverse, exclusive and continuous use of another's land for a period of time as defined by the laws in each state. Title to large parcels of property through adverse possession is very uncommon. It's more likely to come into play over a disputed property line. Eminent domain is the government's constitutional power to take private property for public use, such as for roads, fire stations, or landfills, as long as the owner is paid just compensation. The actual act of taking private property for public use through eminent domain is known as condemnation. The real property of someone who has died with a will, meaning they died testate, is transferred through devise. Property transfers through descent when someone dies without a will, a situation known as intestate. If a property owner dies intestate and there are no heirs or creditors, the property would revert to the state through the process of escheat. As mentioned, a deed is the most common means for conveying ownership in real property. The grantor is the person who conveys their interest in the real property, while the grantee is the person receiving the real property. For a deed to be valid in most states, it must be in writing and contain the following elements: a competent grantor's signature, an identifiable grantee, words of conveyance that show the grantor's intent to convey the property, a legal description of the property, consideration and delivery to and acceptance by the grantee. Note that a grantor may authorize an attorney in fact to sign a deed on their behalf through a power of attorney. There are different types of deeds, which all convey title equally well. The differences are only in the promises, if any, that the grantor is willing to make to the grantee. Such promises in a deed are known as covenants or warranties. General warranty deeds include guarantees that obligate the grantor to defend the grantee from all claims against the title. General warranty deeds give the grantee the best possible protection. With a limited warranty deed, the grantor warrants the title only against defects arising during the time that they owned the property, and not against defects arising before that time. These are also called special warranty deeds. A quitclaim deed conveys any interest in real property the grantor may have at the time the deed is executed. It makes no warranties whatsoever. These are often used to clear an error or issue with an earlier deed. Acknowledgement occurs when a party signs a document before an authorized official stating it was signed voluntarily, such as when the seller or grantor signs a deed. An acknowledgement is not a required element of a valid deed in many states, though it would most likely be required to record the deed. Recording a deed makes its existence clear to third parties as part of the public record. Generally speaking, deeds are not required to be recorded to be valid. Note, however, that recording an invalid deed does not make it valid. Recording a document is a simple process and generally requires a fee to the county recorder's office. In most counties, the document is placed in the public record by being electronically copied to a database. Recording documents allows property owners to defend their estate, right, or interest against third parties claiming a subsequent interest. Although there is no legal requirement to record a real estate document such as a deed, an unrecorded document is likely to be unenforceable against a third party claiming a subsequent right or interest in the property. Since the public records are available for anyone's inspection, everyone is considered to have constructive notice of the contents of recorded documents, even if they do not personally inspect them. If someone examines the documents in the public record, they are said to have actual notice. When conveying real property, the seller is generally expected to deliver marketable title, also known as merchantable title. This is a title that is free and clear from undisclosed encumbrances or other defects that would expose a purchaser to litigation or impede a purchaser's ability to enjoy the property or to later sell the property easily. A title search of the public records, also known as a title examination, is necessary to determine ownership and the quality of the title prior to conveyance. The chain of title is the deeds and other documents transferring title to property from one owner to the next as disclosed in the public record. An abstract of title is a chronological history of title to a property, listing all recorded documents that affect the title. It should include deeds, taxes, special assessments, liens, judgments, mortgages, and other encumbrances that have affected the property, even if they have been removed. A gap or flaw in the chain of title is referred to as a cloud on the title. A suit to quiet title, also called a quiet title action, is a lawsuit to determine and resolve problems of instruments conveying a particular piece of land. It may be required to close any missing links and remove the cloud on the title. Title insurance provides the best evidence of marketable title. It protects lenders and sometimes property owners against loss due to disputes over ownership and defects in the title not found in a search of the public records. A title insurance policy states all possible clouds on or problems with the title. Specific defects or issues listed in the title insurance policy, such as known liens, become exceptions to the title insurance policy coverage. Nearly every lender will require title insurance as a condition of financing the purchase of property. This is known as mortgagee policy. The buyer may also take out an owner's policy. An extended coverage policy covers additional defects in title that may be discovered only through actual inspection or a survey. That concludes our review of forms of ownership and the transfer of title to real property. You should be able to name different methods of voluntary and involuntary alienation and identify 3 primary types of deeds. You should also be able to recall the purpose of recording documents in the public record and the importance of being able to convey marketable title. Remember that a number of the topics discussed here may involve the practice of law. As a well-rounded real estate professional, it's important that you understand these concepts. But remember that you should never tell a client how they should take ownership of real property. Instead, advise them to seek out a qualified attorney.
Yeah, I fucking love this one. Over mono, pieces of 8. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Still slipping.
Don't slip.
Still slipping.
SSLS.
You have messages.
Joy your side. I'm outside. Can you let me in, please, mate? It's proper business down out here. I saw on the doorbell about 5 times. We got a bird up there or something. Come on, son. Don't take the piss. I ain't got all day. When you think you're the big man, you did no little radio show on Los Santos or whatever it's called. Part of London even is that anyway. Come on, hurry up, fella. Literally, honestly, my battery's about to run out in like 3 seconds. I've got 5% left. Fucking piss take.
To listen to your message again, press 1.
listening to the sounds of Joy Orbison.
Measuring land and land use. In this review, we'll focus on the land. We'll look at 3 methods of legal description that may be used to identify a specific parcel of land. We'll briefly discuss how land may be measured and then look at ways in which a landowner's use of their land may be impacted by the government or through private restrictions. A legal description of property is necessary to identify and distinguish that property from all other parcels of land. Legal descriptions identify the boundaries and location of the parcel. They do not describe the improvements to the land. While street names may change, which would change the property's address, a parcel's legal description does not change. Legal descriptions may also appear in mortgages, title insurance policies, appraisals, leases, or purchase agreements. The 3 most common types of legal description are the lot and block system, the metes and bounds system, and the government survey system, also called the rectangular survey system. The metes and bounds system is a complex legal description that is used to define the location, size, and shape of a specific parcel of land. One of the oldest methods of describing property, metes and bounds was imported to the 13 original colonies from England and is most typically used in states along the eastern seaboard. With the metes and bounds system, the surveyor finds the point of beginning of the closest corner of the property. The description continues by indicating a compass direction and a distance to define the boundaries of the parcel, moving clockwise around each side of the entire parcel until ultimately returning to the point of beginning, closing the perimeter of the parcel. The rectangular survey system, sometimes referred to as the government survey system, was originally established by the Continental Congress in 1785 to deal with the sale and settlement of large tracts of land. It divides land into a grid using a series of meridians and baselines. North-south lines are called range lines, and east-west lines are called township lines. North-south strips are called ranges, and east-west strips are called tiers. These divide land into 6-mile square townships. Each township is subdivided into 36 sections of 640 acres. Parcels within sections are described by directions and fractional quadrants. Due to the curvature of the earth, correction lines occur every 4th tier, or 24 miles. The lot and block system describes platted properties, such as properties in a subdivision. A plat map shows lot and block numbers and is usually recorded in the public records of the county where the land is located. Note that a survey is not the same thing as a legal description. It is the formal process of locating and measuring the boundaries of a property and identifying the improvements, encroachments, and easements that are associated with that land. Elevation is a property's vertical measurement above or below a fixed reference point, most commonly sea level. A topographic map shows the elevation of a particular section of land. Let's briefly discuss land measurement. As a real estate professional, you will likely need to do area calculations sometimes. For instance, you may find some properties that list the square footage of a bedroom, while others just provide dimensions. Or perhaps the dimensions of a lot are listed, but your client wants to know the square footage or the size in acres. Area measurement provides the square footage of a parcel of land, the living area of a house, or the size of a room. To find the area of a square or rectangle, multiply the width by the length. To find the area of a triangle, multiply half of the base measurement by the height. Houses tend to be a collection of many shapes, so the total square footage can be determined by separating the house into multiple rectangles and triangles, calculating the square footage for each shape, then adding them together. When calculating square footage for residential property, licensees generally measure from the exterior finished surface of the outside wall inward, distinguishing between finished and unfinished areas of the property and between above grade and below grade areas to determine the gross living area or livable area. Linear measurements determine the length of something. Most often, this will be in the form of a perimeter, which is the length around something. Front feet or frontage is the dimension across the access side of a parcel of land. such as a road, railroad tracks, or water. When referring to lot size, the frontage is the first number. Commercial land is more likely to be sold as a dollar amount per front foot than by square footage. And here's a number you simply must memorize. There are 43,560 square feet in an acre. To find the acreage of a parcel, calculate the square footage, then divide by 43,560. Now, let's turn our attention to ways in which a property owner's title may be challenged. Land ownership can be absolute, meaning the complete bundle of rights belongs to the owner. Generally speaking, owners have the right to use, enjoy, dispose of, and possess property. However, this does not necessarily mean landowners have the absolute right to use and enjoy the land. How can this be? Restrictions are sometimes placed on the land by the government, private companies, and even individuals who have interests in the property. Let's start by discussing the government's 4 primary interests in real property, which can be remembered with the acronym PEAT: police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. Police power is the constitutional authority of federal, state, and local governments, and sometimes public utilities and railroads, to enact and enforce laws that protect the public's health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The most common examples of the government's police power are zoning ordinances, building codes, subdivision regulations, and environmental laws. Earlier, we mentioned eminent domain. Let's review. 2 conditions must be met before the government can exercise its power of eminent domain and take private property. 1. The condemned property is being taken for the use and benefit of the public. And 2. The property owner is paid just compensation for the property taken, which is usually its market value. Remember that residential tenants whose property is condemned before the end of their lease term are entitled to receive relocation assistance. The T in PEAT is taxation, the government's power to levy charges to fund services. For example, property taxes, also known as ad valorem taxes, are imposed on property owners by state and local governments to pay for schools, improvements, or other public needs. Special assessments are taxes levied only against properties that benefit from a public improvement, such as a new sewer line. Special assessment taxes are not permanent. Once the property owner's contribution to the cost of the benefit is paid, the tax ceases. We also mentioned escheat earlier. Under the government's power of escheat, when a person dies in custody, that is, without a will, and has no heirs or creditors, title to property reverts to the state. Abandoned property also escheats. Building codes are an example of the government's police powers. They protect the public by setting minimum standards and requiring builders to use certain construction standards, including particular methods and materials, sanitary equipment, electrical wiring, and fire prevention techniques. The Federal Emergency Management Agency creates flood maps for every U.S. city and county with minimum construction requirements for local building codes. Landowners must obtain building permits before constructing or renovating residential or commercial property. A permit may also be required to destroy or modify an existing property. Certificates of use and occupancy are issued to builders after all inspections have been made and the property is deemed fit for occupancy. Local government entities generally have a planning board. Their comprehensive plan, or master plan, considers factors that impact area growth, such as infrastructure, public transportation, schools, and environmental concerns. The planning board also evaluates subdivision proposals. A site plan or plat describes buildings and utilities, the configuration of streets and sidewalks, and zoning. Environmental impact statements describe potential impact to air and water quality, solid waste disposal, traffic, school enrollment, energy consumption, wildlife, etc. Zoning ordinances are laws adopted by local governments that divide a city or county into areas with different classifications for use. Zoning ordinances regulate lot size, building height, building setbacks, front feet, the density of the area, and buffer zones. Zoning is an appurtenance, which means it runs with the land when property is sold. Zoning is typically enforced through building or occupancy permits or the courts. A non-conforming use occurs when land use does not conform to current zoning laws, but is legally allowed because the land use was established before the new zoning laws were enacted. Most non-conforming uses are allowed to continue, but may not be expanded or enlarged. A variance is a form of administrative relief that allows property to be used in a way that does not comply with the literal requirements of the zoning ordinance. Cluster zoning allows developers to provide a varied selection of lot sizes and housing choices within a single area. Cluster zoning often takes the form of a planned unit development, which is a special type of subdivision allowed in some communities that does not comply with standard zoning and subdivision regulations. Rezoning is a revision in zoning law, usually changing a zone from one type to another. It is not a variance or exception. Spot zoning is usually illegal because it benefits or restricts individual properties within a zone. As mentioned, environmental laws are also an exercise of the government's police power. Real estate licensees should be aware of potential environmental concerns with property so they can advise their clients and tenants, ensuring they are complying with any required disclosures and understand how environmental issues can impact property values. The Federal Environmental Protection Agency enforces laws and regulations to protect the environment. For example, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, referred to as CERCLA, created the CERCLA Fund, which is a trust fund used to clean up severe hazardous waste sites or sites where no responsible party can be claimed. Underground storage tanks that store gasoline, chemicals, and hazardous waste can threaten human health and the environment if they leak, contaminating soil and groundwater. Brownfields are properties whose expansion, redevelopment, or reuse may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of hazardous substances. Buyers can protect themselves from potential liabilities by having an environmental site assessment, which can have up to 4 phases. Phase 1, investigation. Phase 2, testing. Phase 3, remediation. And Phase 4, management. Wetlands are ecosystems where the land is permeated with water, which either lies on or near the surface of the land. Benefits include preventing flood damage, natural filtration, and habitats for wildlife and aquatic species. State agencies generally have the authority to protect wetlands by limiting activities or requiring permits. The Federal Residential Lead-Based Paint Hazard Reduction Act requires sellers, real estate licensees, property managers, and landlords to disclose known paint hazards for homes built before 1978. Sellers must provide reports from any previous tests. Sellers, landlords, and licensees must give prospective residents a brochure about lead paint hazards. Buyers have 10 days to conduct lead testing if they choose, but sellers are not required to test for or remove lead paint or other lead hazards. Now, let's briefly discuss some other specific hazards. Asbestos is a heat-resistant material once used as insulation and other building materials. It is particularly dangerous when friable and crumbling particles are inhaled. Removal of asbestos requires EPA-licensed contractors. Urea formaldehyde foam is an insulation that can emit toxic fumes. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that can get into homes through cracks and build up to dangerous levels if not prevented. Mold is a fungus that can grow anywhere and on any organic material. Methamphetamine is an illegal drug whose manufacture creates toxic residue. Remember, as a real estate licensee, you are not required to be a technical expert regarding environmental issues such as underground storage tanks, mold, radon, or asbestos. You do, however, need to be knowledgeable about potential internal and external hazards. It's critical to recognize red flags and disclose any known or suspected issues. So far, we've focused on ways the government can impact land use, but a property owner's use and enjoyment of their land can also be limited by private deed restrictions, also known as restrictive covenants. These are restrictions or conditions found in a deed or subdivision regulations. Owners' associations usually impose a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions known as CC&Rs to maintain a uniform character and value of its property. These run with the land and could last in perpetuity if they relate to the use, maintenance, or improvement of real property. Any deed restriction that is reasonable and lawful can generally be enforced by the grantor or other property owners under the same restriction by seeking a court injunction to stop or remove the violation. Deed restrictions may not violate the law in any way and cannot be so restrictive as to prevent the free and reasonable transfer of the property. They may be terminated by setting a termination date, releasing the owner, abandoning the property, or changing the property and/or owner circumstances. When a deed restriction and zoning law differ, the more restrictive use prevails. To make a restriction enforceable against third parties, it must be recorded. Once a covenant is in the chain of title in the public records, future buyers take title subject to the restriction, even if it is not stated in the deed. That concludes this review on measuring land and land use. We discussed the 3 different methods of legal descriptions. Remember that a legal description, which uniquely describes a specific parcel of land, is generally required in a deed used to transfer title. We also discussed ways in which the government and private entities can impact a property owner's title, use, and enjoyment of their land.
This is Pegasus Lifestyle Management to remind you that we have a wide range of luxury and specialty vehicles available for delivery. We look forward to helping you soon. Goodbye.
could leave this quietly, treat this life like history. But first I gotta spend this money. So come here, girl, and take it from me. 'Cause all I want is 20s, 100s, 20s, 50s, 100s.
If we want to maintain minimal contact approaching the penthouse, the roof's the access point we gotta breach. We need a chopper, one untraceable to our operation. Hit LSIA, I'm not speaking figuratively. Now I like clean comms, no chitter chatter. Exactly like that. the chopper until the big day. When you got it, fly it to the rooftop, drop off.